Hello everyone, welcome back to the Stitches in STEM YouTube channel. My name is Michaela, I am a knitter from Dublin, Ireland, and this is podcast episode number 16. So I've actually finished 2 objects since the last episode, but the Carla cardigan is currently blocking, so it's sopping wet and I'm not going to show it in that state. I don't think I could show it even if I wanted to. So I'm going to wait until the next episode when I can show it 100% finished, blocked, buttons attached, everything done, and give my final thoughts then. However, if you are dying to know whether or not I got it done in time for Christmas, the answer is no. The yarn arrived on the 23rd, so I did try and work on it on Christmas Eve, but I didn't want to torture myself doing that either, so it got to a point where I decided to just put it down and I finished it on Stephen's Day instead, so it's not the end of the world. The finished object I have to show you today is actually a new cast on since the last episode, and it holds the record for my quickest pair of socks that I've ever knit. These are a gift knit for my sister, so I did mention wanting to cast on another pair of socks in the last episode, but wasn't sure if I would try and finish them before Christmas. I also did not finish these before Christmas. I finished them on Stephen's Day as well, so I got all of my gift knits finished on Stephen's Day, the day after Christmas, which was kind of funny. The yarn that I used is Townhouse Yarns Clarendon Sock Base, and the main colour is called Toffee Pop and the contrast colour is called Single Malt, I think. The main colour is actually a stash yarn, so I had used this yarn to make a pair of socks for myself and I had tons left. I had 55 grams left after making a full length pair of socks for myself, so as you can see I got a full length pair of socks out of it again. And the contrast colour I actually got from a yarn swap, and I didn't actually even realise that they were the same base until I was like halfway through the leg. Like I knew that I was going to use this colour for the contrast colour, but it just didn't occur to me that they were the same base. It was just a really happy coincidence. So for these socks I cast on 64 stitches and I did a 2x2 rib cuff. I did 50 rounds for the leg, I think. Yeah, and then I did a slip stitch, heel flap and gusset, and I did 50 rounds for the foot. In the last episode I talked about, maybe it wasn't the last episode, I think it was a previous episode, I have mentioned before about basically weighing the amount of yarn it takes to knit 10 rounds of the leg and calculating how much yarn I'll need for the foot based on that. So basically adding up how many stitches are in the entire gusset. So for example, I start with 88 stitches on my needles after I pick up stitches along the gusset, and I decrease by 2 stitches every 2 rounds. So, or you could say a stitch every round. So if I have 88 stitches in the first round, then 88 again, 86, 86, 84, 84, all the way down until I get to 64. So I add all of that up and then I do 64 multiplied by the amount of rounds that I want to do, so usually 45 to 50, and I calculate how many stitches in total are needed for the foot, which sounds insane, but it does work because that allows me to knit the leg for as long as I can, knowing how much yarn I'm going to need for the foot, and it usually works out pretty accurate, I've found. So for these socks I had calculated based on a 45 round foot that I would need 14.7 grams for each foot. I did do a 50 round foot in the end and the foot used just over 15 grams, so that kind of tracks really well, and I'm pretty confident using that method going forward to kind of calculate how much yarn I'm going to need for the foot and then base the leg length off that so that I use as much of the yarn as possible when I have a small amount like 50 grams left. It's important to say though that I do always leave a little bit extra, so for these I had calculated that I would need whatever it was, 14.7 grams for the foot. I actually gave myself 16 grams, so I stopped working the legs when I had 32 grams in total of the yarn left, so 16 for each foot, just in case I needed any extra. These were by far my smoothest sailing pair of socks that I've knit in a long time, so if you've watched any of my recent videos you know that I have had issues even with the most basic vanilla socks, so I really enjoyed these. I cast these on the 20th and I finished them on Stephen's Day, so the 26th. So definitely my quickest pair of socks I've ever knit. I've never knit a pair of socks in under a week before. And I didn't hate it. I really thought that if I was pushing myself to knit socks that fast, I would resent it. But I didn't at all. Like, I wasn't home for the weekend of the 20th, I think it was. I can't remember what days of the week it is at the moment. But I wasn't home that weekend and I just had these socks with me. So I made a lot of progress on them over that weekend. And I actually just enjoyed it because I didn't have any issues with yarn amounts or having to frog or anything like that. So yeah, really happy to close out the gift knitting with a good enjoyable pair of socks. They are still damp, so I haven't gifted them yet, and that's why I'm not taking them off the blockers either. So yeah, I'll probably be able to give them this evening or tomorrow at the very latest. The next project I have to show you is my Ingrid Sweater, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. And since the last episode, I have picked up the sleeve and I've made this much progress on it. I actually only picked up the sleeve 2 days ago, so this I think is a lot of progress for that short space of time, and I'm pretty confident that I can get this done quickly based on how fast this sleeve is working up. I suppose it helps not having work at the moment. It's still in the Christmas holidays, so I've been spending so much time with my projects over the last few days, and I'm in such a good space because of it. I'm so happy being able to work on my projects this much. But anyway, this is a pattern by Petite Knit. It's an all over textured drop shoulder pattern. The yarn that I'm using is Eru Ireland BFL Romney base, which is a sport weight yarn, and I'm using the colour Sea Song, which was gifted to me by Eru Ireland. And I'm also holding it with Gepard Garn Kid Seta in the colour Light Sea Green. I'm knitting this mostly on 3.5mm needles, except for the ribbing, which I'm doing on 3mm needles. If you missed the last episode, I am going to frog this colour, so please ignore the state of that and just focus on everything else. So I am on the infamous Ingrid Sweater sleeves. If you have heard anything about these sleeve decreases, you've probably heard that they cause people a bit of trouble. And I hadn't looked too much into it, but now that I'm on it, my understanding of it is that, well, not my understanding, what is happening is basically that the whole sleeve is charted and the chart has the same number of stitches in each row. At the start of the sleeve, you can start at the bottom right of the chart as normal, but every time you add a decrease into the sleeve, you have to shift over 1 stitch, and the chart doesn't do that for you, so you have to know, I have to start on stitch number 2 after the first decrease, and then after the second decrease, you start on stitch number 3, and so on, so on. At some point, you have decreased enough that the multiple of stitches in the chart is correct again, so you can start again from the first stitch in the chart. So when you're shifting over stitch by stitch, it's easy to make that work for the double moss stitch section, but the problem arises in the mock cable section, so these diamonds here, because basically what happens is that one of the decreases, at least for the size small, which is the size I'm knitting, one of the decreases falls either just before the row where the mock cables actually happen at the start of the round. At least that's my understanding of what causes people issues. At least that's what was causing me a bit of an issue. When I started the sleeve, I was prepared to think a lot about it, and I had a few Ravelry projects saved that I could refer to, because there are a lot of good projects with good notes and stuff if you get stuck with this. I was prepared to kind of refer to those if I needed to. But once I actually reached that section, I decided to just give it a go and see how I got on myself. One of the Ravelry projects did mention that she had contacted Petite Knit about it, and the response she got was basically, if you don't have enough stitches to work the mock cable, just don't work it. So that's kind of the advice that I was following as well. But then after I did that row and there was a bit of a gap where the mock cable stitch would have normally been, I ended up actually laddering down from the row afterwards and working a real cable. So basically took the last stitch, the first stitch of the round and the last stitch of the round, and crossed them over each other so that I would still get across, except it was going to be on the seam. And because it's on the seam, you have that a bit of a jog where the last stitch is obviously 1 stitch above the first stitch of the same round. So that caused a little bit of a shift in the mock cable pattern, but I decided to leave it. And I do think I'm on something. I do think I'm on the right track. I just need to maybe figure out the location of the crossing cable. I'm quite happy to accept it in this sleeve, and I'm going to try and improve upon it in the second sleeve. We'll see how that goes. But for the moment, as I said, I'm just happy to accept this as, you know, a sign of it being handmade and not machine made. And I'm prepared to just move on with it. I don't want to think about it too much. I have said that about this project from the start, that I just want to follow the pattern blindly, and that's what I've been doing. So yeah, I don't want to use my brain too much with this project, and it's been working out really well for me so far. So I will keep you updated for the second sleeve on whether that kind of retrospective cabling works out better, but if it doesn't, it doesn't, and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm also alternating yarns for the sleeve in the same way that I did for the body. So sorry, I just realised I'm holding this backwards. Have I been holding this backwards the whole time? I'm sorry. I am alternating yarns for the sleeve the same way I did for the body. So the silk mohair that I use is from 2 different dye lots. The Aero yarn doesn't have a dye lot number on it, but I'm just alternating it just in case. So I did join 2 different yarns when I started the sleeve, and I've just been carrying the yarn up on the inside. However, if I had read ahead in the pattern, I would not have done that, because what you do is you work this eyelet section here, and then you break the yarn and you rejoin like halfway through the sleeve to start your short rows, and you continue the sleeve from there. Because I joined 2 strands, had to break them, had to rejoin them, I have 4 extra ends to weave in compared to what I would have had if I had just done the eyelet section with 1 strand and just joined the second strand when I started the German short rows, which is what I'm going to do for the second sleeve because I don't need more ends to weave in my life. Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm just carrying the yarn up the inside then, so I'm not doing any kind of helical knitting because obviously this is a very textured knit and that would be quite difficult. So if not impossible, I'm not sure. So I'm literally just dropping the yarn at the end of the round and picking up the other yarn to work the next round. And it is creating a tiny bit of a seam up the inside, but it's not noticeable. And I have absolutely no issues with using that method of alternating yarns. I mentioned in my last episode that I was aiming to have this done by the end of the year. I should have clarified in that episode that by the end of the year, I actually mean the end of the holidays. So I'm not back in work until like the first week of January. So after New Year's, I still have a few days off work where I'm going to be working on my knitting and stuff. And yeah, that's what I meant by the end of the year because it is quite close to the new year now. And if I meant the 31st of December, I don't think this would get done. But because I have those few extra days, it is possible that I'll still get it done. And I'm not just moving the goalposts retroactively because I know this isn't going to get done by the end of the year. That is genuinely what I meant by what I wanted to get done by the end of the year. I've made very little progress on my Mackenzie scarf, so we're just going to zip right past that and move on to my Ranunculus. So since the last episode, I have bound off the sleeve and I've also bound off the body. So I just have the second sleeve to work now, which is great. Moving along nicely with this one since the last episode. This is a pattern by Midori Hirose. It's a lace kind of circular yoke sweater and the rest of it is just plain stockinette. The yarn that I'm using is Suec Whisper Lace in the colour number 133 and I'm holding it double. It's a wool and silk blend and I'm knitting this on 6mm needles. Yes, 6mm needles. So yeah, I finished the first sleeve and the body and I just did a regular bind off. I didn't bother with a tubular bind off because this is not that kind of project for me. I'll show some B-roll footage of me trying it on so you can see the length. The sleeve feels a little bit narrow at the moment, but it's not blocked and the body is, and from experience I know that this yarn grows a lot in width, so I'm not too worried about it. I might have to pin it out if I block it, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm also aiming to have this done by the end of the holidays and I do think that's doable because I'm knitting the sleeve on short circulars, so it's kind of just flying by. But yeah, otherwise that's actually all I have to say about this. I do have obviously minor updates having finished the sleeve and the body, but nothing major to report, so we'll move on to the next whip. My next whip is my Levitate Wrap, which is a pattern by My Favourite Things Knitwear. So this pattern is a stockinette wrap cardigan with double knit finishings, which are my favourite feature of it. The yarn that I'm using was gifted from Rowan from their Mode at Rowan collection, and it's the softest alpaca base in the colour ash grey. So the yarn is 70% alpaca, 7% wool and 23% polyamide, and it's 130 metres in a 50-gram ball. So I've actually just finished the front right panel. Actually no, I think I have 2 more rows to do on it and then that'll be finished, and then I'll work the front left panel. In the last episode I mentioned that my row gauge was a little bit smaller or tighter than the row gauge set out in the pattern. So I actually had to add 6 rows on the back panel to match the length indicated in the pattern. So on the front, to match that, I also added some rows. So before the increases start, I just added 2 plain rows here. And then on the bottom, I added an extra repeat of increases. So the increases happen every 4 rows. So I just added an extra 4 rows to bring me up to 6 extra rows in total. So that would match the back panel. I also realized that because it's a wrap cardigan, for every row that I add, I'm actually increasing the width as well. So with a plain cardigan that just goes straight down, when you add more rows, you're obviously just affecting the length. But because each row adds an increase here, it's affecting the width as well. So I think that's something I'll have to keep an eye on. It might end up being that I have to crop it if I don't want it wrapping around too much. But that's just something that I'm aware of right now, and I will see how I feel once I reach the length set out in the pattern. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this for now. I haven't been working on it too much, but I'm just happy to have it on the needles. It's a nice kind of comfort project, and I'm looking forward to being able to put more time into it once I get some of my other projects finished. My last whip is a new cast on, and if you've watched any of my recent videos, you will know how badly I have been wanting to cast on a pair of socks for myself. I finally did it on Christmas Day. I cast on these summer camp socks, which is a free pattern by Jill Zielinski. It's an all over, the cuff is 1x1 rib, but the leg and the foot is all 3x1 rib with these two distinctive kind of stripes here, which I love, these stripes. I have made this pattern before, but the socks grew so much with blocking that they're kind of better as house socks now. So I have been wanting to make another pair for a long time, and I always knew that I was going to use this yarn for it. So this is a sock set by Homespun House, which is a yarn dyer in Germany. The colourway is called Keepsake. The main colour is mainly purple, but it's got spots of reds, blues, and kind of browns or oranges in there too. And the contrast colour is a greyish or a marzipan kind of colour. I got this sock set, I actually asked for it for Christmas last year and I didn't get it, which was fine, I got other stuff. But my birthday is in January, so it was given to me for my birthday instead, so it was ideal. But that means it's nearly a year in my stash, and I don't really like having yarns, or sock yarns at least, in my stash for over a year, so I knew it was time to cast this on. I actually cast this on Christmas Eve, and it just gave me a bit of a cozy feeling having a Christmas cast on, so yeah, I'm really, really glad I finally have started working on these. So I've actually cast on some magpies. Sorry, the magpies were making a racket, so I have closed the window. If the sound has changed, that's why. So the last time I made these, I'd cast on 64 stitches. With these ones, I've done 60 because just in case there's a bit of stretch with the rib, that kind of gets introduced with blocking. I've tried them on so far. I've switched them over to Magic Loop just so I could try them on, and they fit really nicely. So I am praying they don't grow too much with blocking like the last ones. I don't know if the last ones grew because of the yarn or because of the rib. I don't know, but they just grew and I can't wear them really under shoes, which is very unfortunate. I have never done a mid-project block with socks before, but I'm kind of tempted to do it with these just so I don't put so much time into them if they're going to grow to the point of being unwearable. As for the yarn, last Christmas I had also gotten the Homespun House sock set advent, so that was from 2023. And as I was opening them, I noticed that every single yarn had undyed patches in it, at least the colours that were dark enough to see the undyed patches. Obviously, there were some colours in there that were so light that even if they had undyed patches, I wouldn't have been able to see them. But at least for the colours that you could see the undyed patches, there were undyed patches. And they all occurred around where the ties were in the hanks. So from my limited research online, I read that that can happen when the ties are too tight around the yarn while it's in the dye bath. At the time, I hadn't had a lot of experience with hand-dyed yarn, and so I didn't know how common that kind of thing was. You know, I was willing to put it down to it being due to the fact that it's handmade, and there's always going to be imperfections with handmade things. But in the year since, I have worked with a decent amount of hand-dyed yarn, and none of the other hand-dyed yarns I've used have had undyed patches like that. And I've used some like really dark yarns as well and just really evenly dyed. I've just never seen it in other yarns. So it's also one of the more expensive yarns available to me in Europe. Other European yarn dyers, their yarn is available for a little bit cheaper. So, you know, considering the price, considering it seems like an easy fix just to loosen the ties, I was a little bit disappointed. When I received this yarn, a month later for my birthday, the first thing I did was check for those undyed patches, and lo and behold, it also had them. So it wasn't just the advent. Now that it's knit up, I haven't noticed any kind of stark white patches. I think if they do show up, it'll be in very small groups of stitches, like 2 or 3 stitches. And I also think it will be hidden by the variegation. So it could be a bigger problem if it was a tonal yarn, then the undyed patches might stand out more. But obviously that's not something I need to worry about with this yarn. All that to say, it wouldn't stop me from buying from her again. But I do feel the need to bring it up in case it would give you pause, because I wouldn't want someone to see this yarn on my channel, go out and buy it and be disappointed that there are undyed patches. And as I said, it seems like an easy fix, just loosen the ties. It's perhaps a little bit frustrating that it hasn't been addressed. I wouldn't feel comfortable sitting here gushing about the yarn, having noticed those patches and not mentioning them. It wouldn't sit right with me. So yeah, that's my full honest opinion on the yarn. And otherwise I love this color. It was actually on, I had my eye on it for a long time before I got it, and it was sitting in my stash and I could feel it looking at me from across the room whenever I pulled another sock yarn out of my stash to make a pair of socks with. So I'm really glad I'm finally getting to use this, and I am so excited to finish these and to get to wear them. that's actually all of my whips. I feel like I flew through that section. So we'll move on to acquisitions. I do have a couple of things to talk about. The first are the last two yarns from my Olivia and Oliver Fibres sock set advent calendar. So the fourth sock set is based off winter. The main colourway is called Winter Wonderland and the contrast colour is called Juniper. These are both on a sock yarn base with 75% merino wool and 25% nylon. They're 2-ply high twist and there's 425 metres per 100 grams. This colourway is probably tied for my favourite with the spring colourway. I am absolutely in love with this colourway, so yeah, can't wait to get working on these. I'll show the stitch marker attached to it as well. The stitch marker is also my favourite from the advent and I've already put it on a project. It's a little glittery snowflake. The stitch markers are from Terra Clay, which I mentioned in the last episode. And the final sock set, which I opened on Christmas Day. So in the last episode, I said that the final sock set was due to be opened on the 29th, but I was incorrect. It was actually be opened on the 25th, of course. That makes sense. But this one is based on a pink Christmas theme. So the main colour is called Pink Christmas and the contrast colour is called Joy. And I have to say, I am not a neon pink girl and I'm not mad about this one. I have already had someone offer to buy it off me and I'll probably take them up on it because I just won't. I have pretty low standards when it comes to sock yarns. Like I'll knit with anything. I'll knit socks with anything because socks at the end of the day are on your feet and I am just not really fussy about the colours. I actually use socks as a chance to try different colours that I wouldn't usually gravitate towards or to try, you know, the ugliest variegated yarns because I just want to see what it looks like knit up. Like that's how my sock knitting mindset works when it comes to colours. But neon pink is just something that I don't really gel with. I do like the stitch marker. I'm going to keep that little Christmas tree, very festive. But yeah, I'm probably just going to get rid of the sock set. I haven't fully decided yet, but if I do decide to get rid of it, I will get back in touch with that person who has offered to buy it off me. Actually, no, I'm not sure if it was a serious offer, but if it wasn't, I'm sure I can find some way to get rid of it anyway, so it's fine. The other acquisition is something I'm very excited about, and I think I mentioned it before, that I have a friend who lives in Canada, and I had some Mud Punch yarn delivered to her. So Mud Punch is a self-striping yarn dyer in Canada, and I've never used self-striping yarn before, so I was really, really, really excited to try this. I got two colours from her shop update. This one is called Gingerbread Rock. It's obviously quite heavily Christmas themed with the reds and greens in there. I didn't get my hands on it in time to knit it up for Christmas, but definitely for next Christmas, these will be my Christmas socks and I'm really excited. The other colour I got is not Christmas themed. It's called Rock the Float and it's got blues and greens and yellows in there. So yeah, I'm really excited to work with self-striping yarn for the first time. I'm probably going to cast these on during the year and then these will be closer to Christmas time next year, which feels so weird to say next Christmas because it's technically still Christmas time now. And that's all my acquisitions for now. I am actually meeting a friend tomorrow. She lives in Boston, but she's back in Ireland for Christmas, and I had some yarn delivered to her, and I'm going to get it off her tomorrow. And that's a jumper quantity of yarn, so that will bring my acquisitions for December way above what I had originally planned, which means that my overall year-long goal of having more yarn out than yarn in is going to fail, which is fine. That'll be the second year in a row. Maybe next year I'll actually succeed at that, but I haven't actually added up the amounts yet. Usually I do it by grams, but I would say if I were to take an estimate, I'd imagine I'm about 600 grams over on the yarn in. So yeah, I will update the final numbers when I've actually done the calculations. I need to obviously get to the end of December and weigh my knits. The other thing is that I wanted to say was my plans for upcoming videos. So I did mention that I wanted to do like a 2024 Make 9 review. If I didn't mention that in the last episode, I meant to. And so I'm still going to do that, and I want to do making plans for my 2025 Make 9. I've also decided, I did say I wasn't going to do everything I knit in 2024, but I have decided that I'm going to do like a highlights of 2024. So it won't just be projects, it will be like my favourite yarns, my favourite knitting moments of the year, any kind of new techniques that I learned that I'm really proud of. And then I'm also going to include as well as the highs of the year, I'm going to include the lows, which there weren't a lot, but I will include those as well. So it will basically be like anything notable that happened in 2024 knitting related. Hopefully I'll get a chance to film that video in the next few days and it'll be up soon enough. I'm not sure when, but we'll see. But for now, that is everything that I wanted to talk about in this episode. I don't feel like I've been filming for that long, so I'm not sure if this will be a short video or not. Maybe I'm just getting better at filming, but I doubt that. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, let me know what you're working on, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel and I'd be really grateful for it. So until the next episode, happy knitting. Bye.